guys who love to talk fantasy baseball.
3-2.
This is Full Count Fantasy Baseball.
In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened.
Here are your improbable hosts, Dean Millard and Jordan Blundell.
Presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. Get in the game where you own the game.
Well, here we are, the first maiden voyage of Full Count Fantasy Baseball with my good friend Jordan Blundell, the head coach and AGM of the Edmonton Prospects. We used to be working on a show where we had a small fantasy segment, and, you and I have talked so much about, even in the dugout, you're thinking fantasy, so we had to expand this show even more. But welcome back to working on a podcast with me and talking baseball, my man.
Loving it, man. Dino, this is great. I'm glad to be back online with you.
Yeah, it is fun. And once we get through everything and we can start hanging out again, we'll get you back at the Marsh at Podcast Alley here.
Yes, sir.
And we'll fill out this set with a few more baseball items as we go. Might have to make a stop at our good friend Jack Cookson's Pro-Am Sports to pick out a few things. But this show is presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports and proudly broadcast on the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. And we're going to start things off with a question for you every day. Today, it's about the early games. There are, in fact, 5 games that start in just over an hour. Which of them intrigues you the most?
All right, I'm looking at that Astros-Yankees game. You got the dominant Garrett Cole going up against McCullers Jr. He's kind of fronting that rotation in Houston. It's a good fantasy play there. But, Garrett Cole is a top 5 arm in fantasy baseball. And you got Oscar the Grouch happening in New York. You got the Boo Birds coming out for the Astros in New York. And that's a game to watch for sure. And then let's take a look at the Cleveland-Kansas City game. You're looking at a battle of Central Division leaders. The Cleveland Indians and the Kansas City Royals. Danny Duffy's having an unbelievable start to his year going up against Tristan McKenzie is the skinny flamethrower that Cleveland's kind of tapping as the future and maybe the present. They need him to come around here a little bit if they want to improve their playoff chances. And let's look at Hyun-Jin Ryu coming back to the Blue Jays. Also coming back that day is Mike Fiers, your boy. Yes. Your fantasy gem, your hidden diamond in the rough every year is going for the A's. Both guys are coming back. You know what? The other day, Dino, I sent you a message about the Oakland A's. Their pitching staff is wearing gold belts while the rest of the team's wearing green belts. And I thought about this, and I'm frustrated by it.
All right.
Staffers.
All right. Well, I'm glad that this is a place where you feel safe enough to get those things off of your chest. This is a sharing circle, so to speak.
Yes. I'm in the circle of trust.
I've got Mets and I've got Cardinals. I've also got some Red Sox, so I'll keep an eye on that. But definitely, I'm going Astros, Yankees. I've loved it lately. Now, they're sort of crossing the line with the F-bomb chants and stuff because there are kids there, but whatever verbal taunts the Astros get, they deserve. So I'll definitely be keeping an eye on that one. Just a little bit. Big thanks to our title sponsor, Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. It's the most realistic, high-stakes fantasy platform out there. Whatever sport UFFS builds mimics nearly everything about the league it's based on. Right now, hockey is in play. The prize pools are huge, $31,000 this year. Our entry fees are $1,000 next year. This is high stakes, everybody. A progressive pool starts at $10K each for the next 2 years, and an expansion franchise just sold for $10K US as well. Baseball, it's also on the way. Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball will be the next best thing to owning an actual Major League Baseball team. And you will get the chance to own player NFTs as they aren't just fantasy players. www.uffsports.com is where you can find all of the information. This is what is the starting lineup for today's show. We're going to get to the headlines around Major League Baseball. Jordan will take a look at the best bullpens, one of them in particular. I think he just hinted at it. We'll have Baseball Thunderdome, where he's going to have to pick between two superstars. Waiver wire wins. Maybe Mike Fiers pops up in that segment. I'm not sure. Maybe his cool beard will. Top three in the divisions will be something Jordan will take a look at. Prospect Peak, we'll look ahead to the future, and Rule Your League is where we will try and tell you how you can certainly help your league and how you can certainly try to win your league. And here is how you can get in touch with us.
You talking to me? You talking to me? You talking to me? Then who the hell else are you talking to? Talking to me? Well, I'm the only one here.
I'm the only one here now, but soon Jordan will be joining me in Podcast Alley, so we'll be having fun. But to get in touch with either of us, at Duck Millard on Twitter, at Jordan Blundell 4 on Twitter, and we're live right now, sending it out to all of our feeds. So if you do have a question, hit us up live here on the show on Twitter, and we can get in touch with us. You can email fullcountfantasybaseball@gmail.com. You can email the UFSN at uffsports.com. Follow them on Twitter at UFS Network, and check out the websites fullcountfantasybaseball.ca and uffsports.com. Alrighty, my man. Let's get into the headlines that I've picked out, and then you can react to what's been going on. But yesterday, perfect almost attained by John Means. A no-hitter versus the Mariners for the O's starter. Third no-hitter this year in Major League Baseball. Came within a wild pitch of a perfect game. A third strike, wild pitch. And Means was nasty with 12 Ks. Improved to 4-0 on the season. He's got 50 Ks, 46 innings, a minuscule ERA and whip. Early contender for the Cy Young. I know we're a month into the season, but when we're looking at early contenders, a guy with a no-hitter and such great numbers, you got to look at that. Terrible news. Just terrible news across all of Major League Baseball, dude. I mean, right now, Christian Yelich back on the DL. Second time this season with that kind of mysterious back injury. Craig Counsell quoted about the former MVP not being able to do this every day right now, and that's ominous. That's not good news. Even worse news, Dustin May, done for the season. I was absolutely gutted when I saw this. The young fireballer will have Tommy John out for at least this year. You and I did a kind of a practice, a test episode on the weekend, and Dustin May versus the Brewers and Brandon Woodruff was the matchup I was looking forward to. He lasted just 1 2/3. You could immediately see something was wrong. And even Nomar Garciaparra and Joe Davies on the broadcast, they were like, we don't want to be too ominous, but that is not a good sign. Baseball is better when Dustin May is on the diamond. So from a fantasy point of view, you're looking at Tony Gonsolin. Looks like he'll take May's spot in the rotation. I could see David Price getting some start for the Dodgers as well. More bad news on the injury front, but at least not out for the year. But Luis Robert out 12 to 6 weeks. The White Sox Gold Glove outfielder tore his right hip flexor on Sunday running to first base. He could need surgery. Hit for power last year, more successful this year with contact and stealing bases. And I was offered him in a deal in fantasy. So unfortunately for him, he's hurt. Fortunately for me, I dodged a bullet. And something that I talked about last week, when star players are coming back, I like to wait. Juan Soto is a classic example of that. Totally limited in his return. He came off the DL, pinch hit first game back, struck out, wasn't in the starting lineup on Wednesday. The Nats face the Braves today at 4 Eastern, so check. At the very least, make sure he's in the starting lineup. My advice would be not getting him into the starting lineup until he actually has a few good games and look like he's going. And I know that can be a double-edged sword. I usually have that strategy at the start of the season, in the middle of the season. Late in the season, these are the guys that you're counting on, so you put them in the lineup and hope it works. But for right now, I feel that I can miss out on 1 or 2 good games until I feel for sure that guy is back. Classic example, George Springer. If you rush to get George Springer back in your lineup, now he's on the IL again. So, what caught your eye in the headlines that I ran through there, dude?
Well, let's touch on John Means, off to one of the best starts in baseball. This guy's unreal right now. Need to see it for a whole year. Need to see him be able to do this for 6 months, but what an amazing start, Dino. And then the imperfect game yesterday on a strike 3, and then they threw him out stealing, so he faced the minimum. I love that headline. I love seeing pitchers have that kind of success, and the 12 Ks and no walks. I mean, that's just special territory. And then let's touch on Luis Robert. He's out 12 to 16 weeks. You know, it's pretty broad. I'm worried that the hip, that hip. I mean, we saw this with Bo Jackson. Once the hip goes, I'm not sure what you're going to be able to come back and recover from. So that's sad news for that franchise. They were kind of looking at Luis Robert being a pretty big part of what they're doing moving forward. The White Sox have invested in some players, and he was one of them. And yeah, I'm concerned, man. The hip injury, you know, it's not like pitchers in TJ. For the most part, they come back after their first TJ and they have a chance to be just as good or better. But when there's something wrong in the hip, man, that's not good. And the fact that he did it just running and no contact, I'm worried. I'm worried for that. So Luis Robert, his fantasy value now moving forward, I think he's not going to be a guy drafted next year. I'm really concerned, Dino.
Yeah, I would be really concerned as well. Those are some really good points that you brought up. You know, and from a fantasy perspective, this is a guy who has a lot going on as well. Okay, this is your segment now as you take us through some of the best bullpens in Major League Baseball. I know you love to give the relievers their love, and that's a very important thing. So tell us about the bullpen you're talking about today.
Well, you know, Dino, I think relief pitching relievers are the key to winning your fantasy league. You know, obviously depending on what stats you're keeping, but to have those multi-versatile, that's SPRP designation for your relievers, that's huge to pick up strikeouts, to pick up low whip, to pick up K walk, pick up holds, saves, depending on where you're at. Let's talk about the Oakland A's bullpen. Right now, the Oakland A's are the best bullpen in Major League Baseball. And they're doing it unconventionally in some parts with mid-relievers of Sergio Romo and Yusmeiro Petit. Both guys are you know, upper 80s. You know, Romo, that's generous. You know, he's 85 miles an hour with the 75-mile-an-hour slider. Yusmeiro Petit has never been a hard thrower. And, I mean, he's been a mainstay in that Oakland bullpen for years. Both those guys right now are getting it done. Yusmeiro Petit picked up a save the other day against the Blue Jays. You know, that's not going to be a trend that you see a lot of. It was just kind of a situational thing for the A's to go to Yusmeiro Petit. But then you look at the back end and what they're doing with Lou Trevino and Jake Diekman. Lou Trevino, that ball jumps out of his hand at 98, and he is absolutely throwing that ball by major league hitters. It's weird to say this, but not everybody's 98 is the same, Dino. You look at Brusdar Graterol with the Dodgers throwing 100, and he seems to get hit pretty hard. You know, Lou Trevino at 98, guys are swinging and missing. He's created a lot of swing and miss. And when he's not ready, or in the case of the other day against the Blue Jays, they went to Trevino in the 8th inning with the middle of the lineup up for the Blue Jays, the more dangerous hitters, and then closed with Jake Diekman following him in at the bottom of the lineup for the Blue Jays. They've split some saves. I think Lou Trevino's got 6 or 7, where Diekman's got 2 or 3. Trevino's their guy in the 9th inning, but they will use him earlier if they feel it's necessary. And you know what? They can do that when they have a sidewinder, low 3/4 slot Jake Diekman coming at 95 miles an hour. And Jake Diekman's proven. I had him on my team last year, fantasy. You know what? He was huge for me. You know, he's picking up saves, holds, low K walk, high number, low walks is what I mean there. Very much valuable for a fantasy bullpen. So right now, my bullpen to look at is the Oakland A's. They've got more arms coming. They've got a flush farm system. You're going to see some different names come up here throughout the summer. And then they've got some guys coming off the IR, J.B. Wendelken, another unconventional reliever that's having a good year, Dino. So my bullpen to look at this week is the Oakland Athletics.
Welcome to another edition of Thunderdome!
You be cocky and arrogant, even when you're getting beat.
2 men enter, 1 man leaves.
Prediction? Yes, prediction.
And right now, I've got 2 men.
It's serious.
All right, this is serious. Here is your baseball Thunderdome choice for today, Mr. Jordan Blundell. And keep in mind, today's baseball Thunderdome choice is not for a keeper league. So you're in a 1-year fantasy league, no keepers, so you only get this guy for 1 year. Your choice between these two guys is Mookie Betts, Fernando Tatis Jr. Don't think of age. Think of just 1 year, and don't think of last night when Mookie went 0 for 5. Scrap that from your memory, and don't focus too much on Tatis owning Dodger Stadium that weekend. But who would you take just for 1 year right now? Not a keeper league, not looking past 1 year. Go.
Great question. I love the one and done decision to be made here. Well, I'm going to tell you, Dino, I thought this would be more difficult considering the quality and caliber of both these players. But for me, it's not difficult. I'm going Fernando Tatis Jr.
What?
And I'm doing it because over his first 162 games, Dino, he's had the greatest 162 game stretch ever. His numbers are ridiculous. 30-plus home runs, 30-plus steals. His OPS is huge. He's flirting in the 1,000 range. Drives in runs, plays shortstop, and in a one-and-done league, I'm not saying you can replace Mookie Betts, but you can find other outfielders, potentially, depending on how deep your league is, to put up similar numbers. But at the shortstop position, Fernando Tatis is number one. So coupled that with his first 162 games in the big leagues and the numbers he put up, if I'm taking a guy 1 year, one and done, I'm going Fernando Tatis Jr.
Yeah, it's interesting. Listen, if I was in a league and the guy in front of me took Tatis and the second consolation or the consolation prize was Mookie Betts, I'd be dancing in the streets. But when you bring up that position aspect, it's true. Like Trevor Story's having another hell of a season, and let's not forget about some of those guys. Francisco Lindor has been junk, but Tatis Jr. Right now is putting himself in a class of his own. So as much of a Dodger guy I am, I really can't blame you for picking a guy who is just absolutely on fuego, as they say in the Spanish language. Okay, we're going to get to waiver wire wins right after we hear about our beautiful title sponsor.
This is Full Count Fantasy Baseball.
Don't try to strike everybody out. Strikeouts are boring. Besides that, they're fascist.
Presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports.
Throw some ground ball. More democratic.
Get in the game, where you own the game.
Full Count Fantasy Baseball is part of the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network, your one-stop fantasy sports shop. We are building something all fantasy fans will love, and we're looking for quality programming to join us. Reach out if you're interested in being part of the rotation, whether you have a daily, weekly, or even monthly show. If it's about fantasy sports, we would love to chat. Follow at UFS Network or email ufsn@uffsports for more information on how you can own the game. All right, let's keep moving on our next segment, and it's waiver wire wins. And I joked about Mike Fiers being on this list. He will be. I'm telling you, I like to. Mike Fiers is like my good luck charm, man. He's like my lucky rabbit's foot, my weird beard dude. I seem to always end up with him on a fantasy team, one of them, and I never draft him because he doesn't go in many drafts. He's a waiver wire pickup. Sometimes I have him for a couple of weeks. Jesse Winker is another guy, but that's because he is really talented, and I do draft him. He's a guy I target in a lot of leagues for whatever reason. But the guy I'm going with today is Dylan Cease, and he's been pretty dominating in his last couple of starts. Was probably dropped by a lot of fantasy owners and teams after not making it past the fifth inning in his first four starts. but he's reached the 7th and 6th inning in his last 2. He struck out 20, including 11 Reds on Tuesday. He was recording a spin rate on his fastball and slider comparable to guys like Trevor Bauer and Corbin Burns. So those were the only guys in that start were ahead of him with that. So this is a guy who, maybe after his first start, he wasn't picked up by a lot of teams. You're going to have a pretty a shallow league for him to might be available, but he's worth checking out. And if you did pick him up, congratulations to whatever team did it. And hopefully he can keep it going. It's just 2 starts. You are taking a risk, but that's who I'm going for a waiver wire win. And of course, my lucky rabbit's foot, Mike Fiers. What do you got?
Well, I think beauty is in the eye of the beholder, Dino, and the fact that you seem to end up with Mike Fiers every year might say something about your fantasy team.
It's good luck charm.
Nobody else seems to want to jump on that grenade, all right? So I don't know about that. I'm looking at waiver wire pickup this week. I'm looking at a left-handed pitcher for the New York Mets. His name is David Peterson. He's 6'6", 240 pounds. Does that matter? No. I thought it'd be fun to add. He's a big body guy. He releases the ball so close to the plate.
He's a tight end.
Out of his hands.
Is this a football show here? Yeah, he's a big tight end.
Yeah, no doubt. You know what? He's coming 95 plus. He threw last week against on Sunday Night Baseball against who were the Mets? The Phillies, yep. And looked really good. The Mets have some issues in the rotation with the GOAT having some issues right now. Mm-hmm. So. Look for Peterson to be a mainstay in that rotation right now. I think there's fantasy value there. I think he's coming, and I think he's arriving right now. I'm gonna give you a hit or two, Dino, real quick, and this is like the Mike Fiers of hitters. Brandon Belt. He's always available because he's hot and cold, and right now I think he's hot. He's on fire. If you need to pick up a utility or you need to replace somebody that's injured or you got a spot in your offensive lineup, Brandon Belt on one of those roles that he gets on, he'll go on one of these roles and then a horrible role, and he'll do that all year, and you can't trust him. But right now, I think he's hot. If you need a guy for your offense, Brandon Belt, you maybe have him for a week or two and can pick up some easy offensive numbers.
Well, that's what it's all about in particularly in daily leagues and things like that, is finding those guys that are on heaters and then knowing when to let them go and not waiting too long. And that's the thing. Like Mike Fiers would be a guy that you would stream. Like he will probably be on my roster 3 or 4 times, or different guys of that ilk. Like there's, I'm in a dynasty league. I always make sure I have enough 1-year contracts that I can just jettison and pick up a guy. Who's a 2-starter this week? Okay, this guy's, Merrill Kelly was a guy like that. He was on a 1-year contract for me, and then I pick him up different times if he was a two start streamer, or drop him. There's other guys. There's always those guys that you can find in your daily leagues, depending on the matchup. Like, you guess wrong and you're ending up with an ERA of 12 for that day. So I'm not advocating going out and getting Mike Fiers and signing him long term. But you have to watch for those matchup delights where you can take advantage of a guy and then drop him for somebody else the next day. And Brandon Belt is a pretty good example of that when he is on a hot streak. And the key is knowing when that hot streak is ended. And if you knew all those answers, you wouldn't be playing fantasy because you'd be swimming in a pool of money like Scrooge McDuck. So we would be very rich if we could predict all those trends. But tell us a little bit about what division you're going with. You're going to pick a top 3 different categories, different divisions in Major League Baseball. So what is the division you're focusing on today?
I'm going to jump into the NL Central, the offensive juggernaut, the NL Central. We've got the big red machine happening again, 2.0. It's amazing. It's fun to watch the Reds play, man. Their offense is great. They're exciting to watch. They produce runs. Side note, I'm not a huge fan of what Amir Garrett's doing as far as showing guys up. I'm all for the home run sellies and all that kind of stuff, but do it within context of the game. You're detracting from what the game requires from you. So I'm an Amir Garrett fan. I like him. So I hope he's able to clean that up and just get after guys normally. But NL Central right now, it's a fun division to watch. I've got Chris Bryant leading the way in that division, off to an amazing start. He's had some down years here after that World Series win, so It's good to see Chris Bryant come back around, Dino. He's top 10 hitter right now in fantasy baseball, and his last 2 weeks have been outstanding. You see the numbers there. And then Jesse Winker, your boy, man. I wish I had him on my team. He's one of my favorite players in the big leagues. A great name. You got to be a fan of the name. The Big Red Machine's coming back, and Jesse Winker is a huge part of that. And, I got to think that having Joey Votto around those guys doesn't hurt with his experience, with his brain, with his knowledge of the big leagues and hitters and how to be productive. There's always that underrated element. I think another guy that has that ability is a guy like Josh Donaldson. When he's on a team, it seems like offensive guys have a little uptick. So Jesse Winker's off to a great start. I hope he keeps it up. I'm a big fan. And you know what? I'm looking at Nick Castellanos as the next true great right-handed hitter. This guy's been doing it for years. I think he led the major leagues in doubles the last couple years. If not lead, he's in the top 5 for doubles every year. Nick Castellanos, the guy I wish I had on my team. That's a standard 2-week set for him, a 14-day set. 10 runs, 4 bombs, 10 ribs, a stolen base. His OPS is always hovering around 1,000 or plus. And he's the linchpin of that lineup hidden in the middle. So right now, that NL Central is really fun to watch if you love offensive baseball. They've got some guys that are swinging it. And it's good to see Chris Bryant back in the mix.
Yeah, first of all, with the celebration comment, the kids of today would say you're old man yelling at a cloud by not liking the celebrations. But I loved Tatis doing the eye thing and then Bauer the tweet back and forth. I think that's good for the game. But I think when you can do it in kind of a fun way, and I guess it depends on the pitcher. Like, I probably wouldn't try that with Randy Johnson or Nolan Ryan back in the day, but Trevor Bauer gets it. He knows that baseball has to be more than what's on the diamond, and Tatis Jr. gets it. So that's good there. The other thing is Winker, I love it. I love the stories that Oral Hershiser and Joe Davies told on the broadcast about when he came up, and he talked about himself in third person, like, Wink does 2 things, hits long balls and does home run trots and stuff like that. So I love that. But when I first drafted him, I was calling him the Fonz because I thought his name was, I thought there was an L in there. I thought it was Winkler. So his nickname, the first time I drafted, I'm like, I drafted the Fonz. I'm like, oh, it's Winker. Oh, okay. So for some reason, I still think of him as the Fonz because he is one of the best hitters in the game. I have him in our league that I'm in with you. I have him in another league. And, he wasn't even, 2 years ago when I first grabbed him, I was like, oh, this guy could be pretty good. Now he's a guy I'll probably re-sign because he has become one of the best hitters in baseball. So I'm glad you did that. And I think the Reds are, I don't know. I've always liked the Reds. They were brash back in the Big Red Machine days and stuff like that. I'd like to see that resurgence with Cincinnati.
I love the brashness. I love the cockiness. And I love the celebrations, the pounding your chest like you're a better man. It just went overboard for me, Amir Garrett. It just draws negative attention. And I say that with all due respect to the Sellies. I love what Tatis did, and I love how Trevor Bauer is supporting that and trying to move the game towards that kind of one-on-one Sellies back and forth, where Amir Garrett, it was just this incite violence, and you're talking like, and I'm not against brawls happening when they're warranted. Guy wearing a pitch or too many retribution pitches on the inner half and things boil over. I'm all about that, Dino. I don't love when guys, just strike a guy out and then challenge the bench for no reason. And it seemed a little contrived. So, and I'm a big fan of Amir Garrett. I love what he brings. He brings some intimidation to the mound. Brings a big-time fastball, and it is entertaining to a point. But for me, that one was a bit too far, and to each their own. And like Dino, you're never going to run across a guy that loves a bench-clearing brawl more than I do. So that's where I'm coming from.
I love Bauer stomps. He does the Connor walk when he strikes out the side, things like Dustin May when he stomps. I love those guys that just they like Bruce Delgado. You and I have talked about him, and last year in the World Series, that guy was celebrating everything like they had just won. And so, I think when you celebrate everything, like I don't know if you saw Jock Peterson hit that deep fly ball yesterday at Wrigley Field. He thought it was out. Mini bat flip against his former team, and then he was running the bases, and he got oh my God, he got caught face. And so, if you celebrate too early, you're also going to get caught. How many times have we seen a guy drop a football on the way across the goal line? So celebrating is great, but it can come back to bite you in the ass at different times as well. So it's interesting. All right, you're going to take a look into the future in Prospect Peak and a whole lot more right after we hear a word from our sponsor.
This is Full Count Fantasy Baseball.
How's the elbow, Scott?
It's good. It's really good. It's great. I can't throw the ball.
Good news is, we want you to play first base for the Oakland A's.
Presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports.
But thing is
You don't know how to play first base.
You own the game.
It's not that hard, Scott. Tell him, Wash.
It's incredibly hard.
Oh, Moneyball, and that scene in particular, one of the best ever. Full Count Fantasy Baseball presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports, the most realistic fantasy platform around. The Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League mimics everything about the NHL, from a scouting program to playoff series after a playoff draft where you pluck from the non-playoff fantasy franchises. And they aren't just fantasy players, they're NFTs, digital assets on the Zilliqa blockchain. You get to bid, you trade, build your team, franchise, or scouting platform. With UFFS, you own the game. So get in the game. Check out all the details. www.uffsports.com. Okay, let's take a look at the future now, a little prospect peek, and a little play on words, as my good friend Jordan Blundell is the head coach and AGM for the Edmonton Prospects. And just, for those that are glad to see you back on the podcast division again, what's going on with the season? You guys are hoping to get in a season at some point this year.
Yeah. So right now, Dino, we're planning to start mid-June. Granted everything that's going on right now. We do have the ability to be flexible on that start time. So we're very hopeful, really that the world in our area in Alberta is able to come back down to earth with some of these numbers and people can be a little bit safer. If everything goes according to plan, we'd love to be able to start mid-June, play about 42, 46 games. We've got a roster ready to go, and it'll just be a Canadian league this year, Dino. It's a summer collegiate league. Typically, we have players from all over North America, and frankly, our organization has brought guys in from Japan and Taiwan and had an international flavor in Puerto Rico, and we love those guys. So we're kind of an open borders team, and we're hopeful to get guys in our jersey this summer, Dino, and then obviously a return to some sort of roster normalcy for 20. What are we in, 2022? You got to figure out what year it is here. So we're hopeful for that, Dino. The prospect pick I've got for you this week is, let's take a look at the Blue Jays' top prospect, Nate Pearson. Nate Pearson's coming back from a groin injury. It suffered in spring training. He had his first outing at AAA level with the Bisons. I'm not even sure if they're playing in Buffalo right now, but the Bisons AAA affiliate of the Toronto Blue Jays. Nate Pearson came out, struck out 8 guys, had 1 walk, had 53 strikes out of 78 pitches. So we're looking at command, showing velocity, touched 100. That's really good news for the Blue Jays, who are probably in need of another arm or two in that starting rotation at the big league level. So I think that you won't see Nate Pearson up there just yet. They probably need to run him out 2 more times. So maybe in 10 to 14 days, you may see a recall here. Maybe they fast track him, but I think their plan's always been to be very cautious with Nate Pearson. So exciting news for Blue Jays fans, exciting news for fantasy players, as for the most part, I would think that Nate Pearson will be available, and there'll be a bit of a strategy behind getting him signed off the waiver wire in your league. So if you don't have guys stashed on NA, if your league's not super deep, I think Nate Pearson's probably going to be available and looks to be a guy that can be a difference maker with big-time strikeout K-walk numbers. He's never going to throw a complete game. They're just not going to be that kind of guy. So you're looking at probably a 3 to 5 inning guy on a great day, maybe gets into the 7th inning, but has a high upside with strikeout numbers. So think of him as almost an uber reliever that's starting games.
Yeah, and a lot of times those guys come up and they start in the bullpen, and then there's lengthened out into starters different times. I'm going with a guy by the name of Andrew Vaughn. We talked about the White Sox earlier with Luis Robert's injury. They're also without Eloy Jimenez. So Vaughn still qualifies as a prospect in most leagues. He just has 55 at-bats, and you can stash him in your minors if you have him, or you can actually put him in your lineup. He was playing first DH. Now he's out in the outfield, despite never playing a regular season game. He has 3 Cactus League games in the outfield, but they'll soon qualify at another position. So, another guy, like you mentioned the White Sox, there was a lot of hype for the White Sox over the last 2 years, actually. And now injuries and, shortened season or whatever it was. This is for White Sox fans, you're looking at it saying, okay, this much potential, and now we keep stalling out. But, an opportunity for Vaughn to get a lot of playing time. I don't know if they're going to call him Wild Thing or not, but Andrew Vaughn is the guy I would be looking at as a prospect that he's soon going to be, shedding the label of prospect and just becoming an everyday player. So if you can get him now and still stash him in your minors or on your roster and see how he produces, probably would be a wise move. All right, let's check out some rules.
Smokey, this is not Nam. This is bowling. There are rules.
I don't think it taints it.
What you talking about, mister?
You're crazy. I like you, but you're crazy.
Okay, so the rule I'm going with this week, and we just saw something happen last night, just for the 3rd time in Major League Baseball this season, but I think every league should have a no-hitter bonus. I mean, you could also have a cycle bonus if you wanted to make something even for hitters, but why not have a no-hitter? Like, whatever it is, maybe it's a category that puts you over the top that week and gets you that win, and most week it's going to be split, or in a points league, maybe it's like a 10-point bonus or something, but it's one of the most exciting things in the game of baseball, a no-hitter. You hear about it, you're tuning in. That should be worth something in fantasy as some sort of bonus category. I don't know what you think about that, but when it's the best play and most exciting event in the game, I think it should be worth something in fantasy.
Great point, Dino. I don't know if I've ever been so on board with something you've said. I love that idea. That's the best idea.
What a backhanded compliment.
The best idea you've ever had right there. I love it. Why not? Why not? That is, you're right. And you know what? People tune in. Maybe they're not watching the game. They get an update on their phone and they find a way to pick up the last 3 innings.
Yep.
It brings so much attention to the game. I was busy yesterday on field with some youth players, so I didn't know what was going on. Had I been in a different situation and just kind of hanging out or watching TV or whatever it may be, and that came up on my phone, I would have found a way to tune in. And if you're a fantasy owner and that happens for a guy on your team, you're super jacked. And if you get a bonus, how much better is that for the intrigue of the league? So great point, Dino. I'll go a little bit more classic, a little bit more boring. I've got some ideas moving forward for this segment, but rule your league. I'm going to give you a rule of thumb here, Dino. Mm-hmm. I think it's vitally important that you have 2 players that are able to slot into the middle infield as versatile players, as potential utility guys. And I'm not just talking, the 2 guys that you have starting, but you need to have guys that are able to play the middle infield / third base. So they've got that second, third, and shortstop designation, or you've got a shortstop / outfielder designation, more so than just the corner spots, the first base, third base, and the typical first base outfield designation. The reason being, Dino, is there are so many outfielders. There are so many first basemen. And unless you're in a league that It's 20, 30 franchises deep. I know a lot of guys are in, 10, 12, 14 team leagues. You got a lot of options at those spots, and there's a lot of parity as you get down from the top 3 or 4 guys. So you're really just kind of flipping guys in and out that put up the same kind of numbers. Now, if you have that flexibility in the middle infield on off days when your whole lineup's not going, you may be able to pick up some stolen bases. You may be able to get an extra guy or two in a lineup because of that versatility. So I guess I'll boil it down to having positional versatility in your roster for the season. I think that's crucial to being a winning fantasy baseball player.
All right. Good advice, as usual. It's going to wrap things up for us this week. But before we go, we got to get to what we're going to be watching for this weekend as far as baseball, fantasy baseball. I'm going with the Braves-Phillies. Sunday night ESPN game. Ronald Acuna Jr. leading Major League Baseball right now with, I think it's 10 home runs. Aaron Nola taking the hill for the Phillies. A lot of offense. What's going to happen with Harper? Is he going to be back? So I'll go with the Braves and Phillies. Two powerful teams. Both teams got a lot of offense. Braves have some great young players. Is there a particular game that is going to catch your eye this weekend?
Well, I like that you brought up the Phillies, man. Dino, Bryce Harper needs to get back in that lineup, so I'm looking forward to that happening. And I'm a Giants fan right now, Dino. I love the NL West. I want to see the Giants continue this run, so I'll have my eyes on that lineup and that team here moving forward.
Excellent stuff. Full Count Fantasy Baseball is part of the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network, your one-stop fantasy sports shop. Email UFSN at uffsports.com. And, of course, this show is presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. Check out the future of fantasy on the blockchain at www.uffsports.com. Thanks so much, man. This was a lot of fun. I can't wait to do this every Thursday live at 10 o'clock and then just slide right in to the early games. One message for every fantasy player out there. That was Kevin Costner telling you to be cocky and arrogant even when you're getting beat, but I'm not sure what happened to the song. Anyway, I'll leave you with my piece of advice. Ban the shift. We'll see you next Thursday, everybody.